Hello, what's up, everybody? My name is Eron, and today I'm going to take a look at a project that recently came out, probably within the last week as of uploading this, and it is called Wire by Nishwakie. It's going to be one of the largest projects that I've mixed up to date. I think it is an incredibly beautiful song, and I'm excited to go over it, assuming or hopefully allowing this computer to handle both recording and playing back at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right into it. I'm not entirely sure what direction I'm going to be taking this discussion of the mix into. I'm going to try and cover as much as I can. So let's start. So I really enjoy the way that the song and the arrangement set itself up. There are basically only two things that are going on. Number one is we have drums and we also have guitars going on. So if we were to take everything else out and just solo the drums and guitar, we have basically what I assume is going to be the same arrangement. Oh, with the bass as well. The drums, the main drums of this is just a loop that Quincy had sent over to me. This is what it sounds like. It's already pretty solid as is. I didn't really need to add anything to it. I did add an FG401 on top of it to give it some more beef. I used the drum bus fattener, which is a great preset. I generally don't use presets, but I think the Slate ones that come with it generally tend to help quite a bit, and then I tweaked it from there. So this is what we get. And then obviously we also have on the drum bus just a virtual console, the Virtual Console Collection VCC. Added a bit of the Brit 4K. I cannot remember what that emulates. And then we have the decapitator, which I think would darken it just a little bit. So it gives it a little bit more beef in the low end. And the gain tool, just to bring it up, the drum bus, plus 10, because it was a little bit quiet on the bus. And then I had a little bit of reverb. The Nimbus was the main reverb of this song. I was using this on probably most instruments, as well as the main reverb for the vocals, which fit the vibe best of all the reverb choices that I had over here. So I believe I had to cut out a lot of the low end. I had to cut out a lot of the low end as to avoid the kick drum from getting some, because it would have sounded booming. So just cut that out. So that's a drum loop, and that's pretty consistent throughout the entire song. And then the guitars are pretty standard. All I did was brighten it up a little bit, have the low end cut. No, I also did dull it a little bit, the acoustic guitar. And then I made it a little bit wider as well, just a tad bit. I didn't do so much. I lowered the mix quite a bit. So it's really subtle. That's an incredibly subtle width adjustment there. And then on top of that, here's the electric guitar that Josh was playing. Very, very subtle. What do you call it? Haas effect. I did a +5 on the right ear. It's just really tiny. On top of that, the FG401 really compressed that guitar. Probably had it sit around -5 to -7. And this guitar track comes in later. So that's pretty much all that we got. So I also use Nimbus on the guitar reverb. And then this is a micro shift just specifically for the electric guitar. Instead of placing the micro shift plugin on the actual track, I decided to send it out and even more subtly so, just to bring down the mix on with that entire track. So instead of having it super wide, so it's again, it's just to add a little bit of width. Let's go ahead and go into the verse, or into the main part of the song right here.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play. You got that lover serving trace. No sleeping dreamers come to stay. You know this ain't no different day.
So the lead vocal was actually a lot of parts. There were a good number of tracks for the lead vocal, and then I condensed it into one. What had happened was I sent this out actually to a mastering engineer who wanted to try out a new plugin that he was demoing called Soothe, and that was just to basically de-ess it. So he smoothed it out a little bit, but before then, this is my processing on the vocal track, on the lead vocal right here.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play. We got that lover serving trace. No.
So some of the standards that I used, I went ahead and ran it through an R comp. So here we have that doing the main compression right here.
The sleeping dreamers come to stay. You know this ain't no different day.
I believe, let's see, do I have any other compressors going on? I do not. I guess I did some light compression on the main vocal.
You know this time I like to play.
And then what I've got going on here, I just have a couple of preamps, I believe. One with the London, one was Hollywood. I can't remember exactly what either of these are. I do remember that London sort of emulates something along the lines of the Beatles recording gear. I should know this, but I don't.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play.
So just to give it a little bit more dirt, the gate is here just to prevent any additional noise that I wasn't able to cut out from the microphone leak. It's to catch all those extra little bits and pieces of audio that might have been left out from that.
We got that lover serving trace. No, the sleeping dreamers come to stay.
And then we had two EQs on here. They're both pretty similar in terms of the curve. This is basically to give it a little bit more, to make it a little bit less heavy. These EQs were. Cutting out the low end is one of the things I do pretty often on vocals.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play. We got that lover serving trace. No.
And then just a simple de-esser on top of it, just to smoothen it out a little bit. Yep, for sure I did use a Nimbus reverb.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play.
And then for my delays, I used Echo Boy, and then I believe I had sidechained the main vocal to the reverb. I mean, to the main vocal to the delay, so it doesn't bleed in. And then I sent out that delay into the main reverb. So this is what it sounds like.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play.
And then this is what it'd sound like if it wasn't sidechained right here.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play.
So it only comes out after. And that is what I'm doing with the sidechain. I decided to go with a little bit of ping pong, but really narrow down the width so it's not too out into your ears. So that's going on with the main vocal right there, right here.
You know this time I like to play. We got that lover serving trace. No. Sleeping dreamers come to stay. You know this ain't no different day.
This one was fun, working with the background vocals. So one of the hard things about background vocals is how do you make it sound bigger and wider. And so I learned a couple of things. I was experimenting and tried out a couple of things. Number one, send it to another reverb. And so many of these vocal tracks are being sent out to this specific reverb, I believe. It is a short one. Yeah, this is a pretty short hall reverb, but the other thing that I was doing was sending it out to microshift. If I had two options for this, either use Waves as a doubler, the microshift, and I've been using microshift a lot for my width on vocals, instruments, and all that. So I sent it out to a microshift and kept the mix all the way up this time around. So microshift just gives it a little bit more depth. Didn't want to turn it up too much in the mix, so this is the background vocals that we get.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play. We got that love and every stress. You see when dreamers come to stay.
Cool. There's one more thing that's going on in here that I can take note of, and that is the strings arrangement. The strings, honestly, there wasn't really that much that was done to it in general throughout the mix, other than probably just some automation. You can see that there's a little bump in the string volume right here when we get into the main part, but I'm jumping ahead of myself. I'll get to that little piece of automation there later. So this is the string arrangement. Sounds a little bit thin right now, but I had to go ahead and duck a little bit. Actually, that was quite a bit on the low mids. Just didn't want it to be clashing with other frequencies that was happening in the mix.
You know this time I like to play. We got that love and every stress. You see when dreamers come to stay.
And then we have just a layer of the keys going on. It's just an electric piano that happens quite a bit. This is pretty repetitive. There's nothing happening with the keys. This was bounced out as wet as it was, and I didn't really need to do anything else to it in the mix. So the keys will largely be ignored throughout this song. Let's keep going.
It's a trust I've gained. It's not a living choice. It's a dying game. They ask me where she come from. Who's that chick? You been happy? Where you been? I ain't gotta tell you that. That's why I'm about to run this track. Ooh, I dreamed of that.
No, there's nothing really interesting to note. There were a couple of tambourines that were happening right here. That's about it in terms of a change. Quincy recorded these tambourines at his home, which is super nice. It's going out to a little, again, Nimbus reverb. I'm not sure that I've used another reverb in this specific song.
And don't you know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play. We got that love and serving trace. Sleeping dreamers come to you stay. You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play. We got that love and serving trace. Sleeping dreamers come to you stay.
Okay, that's cool. So one of the things I wish I had done in this mix is actually bring up this harmony just a bit more. Actually, a lot more. Wish I had brought it up.
We got that love and serving trace. Sleeping dreamers come to you stay. You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play.
Went ahead and had some microshift on there. Instead of sending it out to a reverb, I just put the reverb on top of it.
You know this ain't no different day. You are so I like to.
I needed to seat it back a little bit further into the mix. That's why I threw a reverb on top of it. I have Pan Man going on here, apparently. I use Pan Man a lot to give the song a little bit more subtle movements, just to make it more interesting without the listener really realizing that it's moving.
You always on a different day. You always so I like to play.
So very subtly, this harmony is bouncing back and forth between the left and right ear, which it would sound really static if it was just staying in place, but it goes back and forth between the left and right ear ever so slightly for about a count of 2 bars each. If I were to expand the width, then it would go ahead and it would bounce back and forth a little bit more.
You always on a different day. You know this time I like to play. We got that love and serving trace. Sleeping dreamers come to you stay.
But I kept it a little bit smoother and short. It's not really incredibly noticeable, but if it were to stay still, then it would be a little bit bland is what it would have been. So let's go.
Dreamers come to you stay. I'm a survivor. I am no liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I need that life. I am a fiend. I need that desire. I just fool. Don't be a fool.
Oh, this one was a really interesting one. It was kind of challenging to throw in the talking vocals, get it to sit well in the mix. So let's see how it sounds. Oh no, that wasn't it. I should have labeled these a little bit better, but here I am.
I need a life. I am a fiend. I need that desire.
Cool. So, was it this? No, it wasn't this one.
I'm a survivor. I am no liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger.
But while we're here, what did I send it out to? Yes, another reverb, and yes, more micro shift. Instead of going up all the way on the send, this is handling so many different tracks. That's why. But this is what it sounds like.
I'm a survivor. I am no liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I ain't a life. I am a fiend. I need that desire.
And if we were to mute it, this is what we get.
I'm a survivor. I am no liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I ain't a life. I am.
It already helps that there are 3 in total. That's really nice. I can pan one hard to the left, hard to the right, and keep one in the center. Again, micro shift just gives it a little bit more of that width, a little bit more of that bump. Let me see. If I don't find the talking one, I will probably just skip by it.
I'm a survivor. I am no liar.
That hey is so special. I had to isolate it. That needed to be on its own.
Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I need that life. I am a fiend. I need that desire.
Oh, there we go. That's what it was. Yeah, this one was really challenging to put in.
I am the liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I'm live. I'm a fiend. Desire.
Cut out a bit of the highs and just basically had a band for it right there, band pass for it. Not such a band pass. This obviously isn't cutting all the highs out, but had to tuck it in as well. So there's that.
Don't be a fool. One hit from a wire.
From a wire.
And he's talking in 2 tracks, not just one. I didn't want to widen it the way that I did with microshift on others because this is way more subtle. And this one I think can stand to be a little bit thin.
I'm a survivor. I am no liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I need a life. I am a fiend. I need that desire. I live a fool. Don't be a fool. One hit from a wire. Go ahead from a wire.
Let's see. There were a couple other things that was interesting here. I think I did. Yeah, there we go. Right here. So there's quite a bit of automation. Getting the harmonies balanced with the main melody, main line, was a little bit tricky. So here, when he says desire, I ride up the volume just a little bit, and then I tuck it back down, because that gives it that energy, that contrast right there.
I'm a survivor. I am no liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I need a life. I am a fiend. I need that desire. I will live fool. Won't be.
It's so slight, and I think the reason that it doesn't really translate super well is because it's being compressed on the main one here. I compressed this one with the distressor because since he's yelling, the volume is a little bit variable. So
I'm a survivor. I am a liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I ain't alive. I'm a feeling that desire. I will live for.
So there's that part of the mix right there. Let's keep going.
Don't be a fool. Hang from a wire. Don't hang from a wire.
Oh, that one was fun. So this is a little exchange. I remember when I first started mixing this, and then Josh had told me, hey, where's that little acoustic guitar solo? And I just never had it, never really received it. So this is a little part, I guess, a bridge, so to speak, instrumental bridge. I believe Quincy was playing acoustic, and then Josh was playing electric, and it's basically just that little exchange between the two. Nothing really processing-wise going on there. There's just fun. That was just a fun little part. A lot of the remaining portion of this is just instrumental up until we get to the final chorus. This one was cool. I did use another reverb. This one is the Verb Suite Classics from Slate. I just used the default setting. It sounded good. I don't know. I guess that's how it worked. And then I have this doubler right here. This is my alternative to micro shift. So I guess it's so interesting because the reverb here, it describes itself as a plate, but it sounds much like a short haul to me. But I don't know. It was what I was looking for, so we'll stick with it. I love this upcoming part. I really love the way that this song ended. Let's go and take a dive.
I'm a survivor. I am a liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I need that life. I am a feeling that desire. I need the floor, don't be a fool. Hang from a wire. Hang from a wire. I'm a survivor. I am a liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I need that life. I am a feeling that desire. I need the floor, don't be a fool. Hang from a wire. Hang from a wire.
I love that ending so much. There are a lot of things to unpack here. Let's take a look at it vocally first. There were a lot of when I got the ad-libs back from Tarek, I was really excited what he had added. It was going to give a lot of options. So I had so many different routes, or I wouldn't say many, but I had a few different routes to take. One of them was to still keep the main vocal like on top and clearly on top, and then have the ad-libs and like, you know, where he's like going like put those and tuck those in the back. Or I had the other option of just bring them all forward, and I wanted to bring it as forward as I can while you could still hear the chorus. So that's what I was doing for this part of the mix. So let's check it out.
I'm a survivor. I am no liar. Give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I need that life. I am a feeling that desire. I live it full, don't be a fool. Hang from a wire. Hang from a wire. I'm a survivor. I am no
So it sounds like a mess, but I really like that. I'm not that it sounds like, I don't think a mess is necessarily like a bad thing in this scenario or this case or this instance, but I really enjoy how everything comes together the way that it does, and it just brings out all that kind of energy. So just the hype ad-libs, nothing incredibly melodic about them. I think maybe towards the end they get a little bit so that way, but this is what we have.
I'm a survivor. Give me the time, yeah, the tiger.
So honestly, like, dude's just going off, and he's probably like he tripped up on a couple of them, but I don't care. We're gonna leave them there. Number 2, at least that's what we've labeled it as. Just again, Pan Man to keep it moving from left to right, so it's moving. It's a moving vocal part. In the context of the mix, it's not incredibly noticeable, but. And then, as you can see here, everything goes up the way that I would like for it to. I bring it from -11 all the way to +5. Let me go ahead and play it. And that's just to give it a lift off, that little break, that little part that it needs right there. And also the same thing with this number 1, this ad lib right here.
Yeah.
So just to so by itself it doesn't do that much, but when you collectively bring all these automations, which exist in other instruments and in other drums, you will see that it does make a huge difference. Actually, drums were not a part of that, but let's keep going with this. No, not from there. Whoops. Yikes. Okay, I'm gonna solo these ad libs again.
Give me the time, yeah, the tiger.
The way that these vocals came in and ended the song, I needed those to be out. So you can see right here. So this was tucked in. These parts were tucked in right here.
Give me the time, the other tire. Half from a wire. Don't have from a wire, baby.
They didn't need to be up in the front, but this really did.
Woo, yeah, half a wire.
Just those make this. I felt like it made this huge difference going into the end of the song, driving the whole point home, driving the song to its conclusion. That's what I really loved about it. And then we have this other one right here.
Hey, woo, do. Yeah.
This part puts it home.
Well, half of a wire, baby.
Puts it home, drove it home, whatever it is. And then in full context, you'll hear it.
I'm a survivor. I am no liar. Give me the time. I am the tiger. I need a life. I am a fiend. I desire. I let you fool. Don't be a fool. Half from a wire. Go half from a wire.
Amazing, cool. Well, we're not done with the ending just yet. We're gonna go ahead and take a look at a couple of other parts. The drums is not the same at the ending. Quincy has a brain. I don't know how I say it. But Quincy was incredible when he made this decision to add a drum line right here. I loved it. I loved that choice right here. I still need to figure out what samples he used for that. But again, like with all others that I would like to give movement, I added yet again, Pan Man. So that was beautiful. Pan Man, obviously, again, just to give it more movement. If it's marching, then it'll give it that sort of energy. And then with the EQ, what are we doing here? Cutting out a lot of the low end, dipping a lot of the, I believe, bass drums. Yeah, I really needed to dip that bass drum so there's some room for the rest of the song. But then I peaked, I boosted around 3K. I needed the snares to come out and show itself a little bit more. Yeah, there was a huge booming issue. So that's that, and that is playing alongside the drum loop right here. There's a lot of energy. We have a tambourine as well. I think the challenge for this part was finding how much I could bring the drum line up while maintaining that drum loop and not so it still sounds balanced, like it still sounds like it is a part of the song. Initially I had the drum line like 4 dB less, but it just didn't have that kind of energy that I wanted. So this is kind of what I ended up with here. As compared to this. And then the end. I am no liar, give me the time, the eye of the tiger. I need that life, I am feeling that desire. Oh, I missed one part before the ending. So here, I'm going to go ahead and touch on that. Here, this part, going into from the instrumental bridge, so to speak, going into the final chorus, just this one part with the strings, I think, really brings that energy up, which is a lot of what I've been talking about in this mix. A lot of energy, a lot of energy. So this right here is what it is. It's I felt like it was a little bit harder to hear in the final mix, but when I was doing it when it was soloed, this is what it sounded like. I should have probably added more automation on that. It's probably what I would have done. Now that I'm a few weeks removed from completing this mix, I would have automated the gain a little bit more and probably boosted it up on top of what I'm already automating the faders to do. Would have been difficult. I'm already clipping at +7 over there, so gotta keep that balance. But anyway, aside from that, let's see what else do we have going on. We might be pretty close to taking a look at the entire song as I just talk through it. Feeling that desire, I'm a survivor. I am no liar, give me the time, I am the tiger. I need a life, I am a feeling that desire. I let you flow, don't be a fool, hang from a wire, hang from a wire. Okay, that was beautiful. I guess I'll go ahead and just talk about a couple of other things. Number one, just the delays on the guitars, pretty standard. Like the guitar itself didn't lend the need for the delay to go into the reverb. It already sounds pretty spacey as is. So just take a little bit of high cut on there, and that's why the song ends with just a couple of echoes. It's just about right, just about as much as it needs. I guess I'll go over a couple of the macros, just some of the big picture plugins that I put on here. Drums, we're going through a VCC plugin from Slate, put it on the Brit 4K, which I mentioned earlier. I believe I talked about the Decapitator as well. This is a really nice plugin for saturation, just to add some beef to your mixes or to whatever instrument. I would decapitate freaking everything. Unfortunately, like, this is a substitute that I have for FabFilter's Saturn, so I'm a little bit spoiled like that. But I'm not spending money on FabFilter right now. And then for the vocals, I added a little bit of air, though I would now add this plugin from Plugin Alliance. It's a Mag EQ4. And then I would either go 10 or 20 and then add a couple of decibels to the air right there. I'm going to quickly find a new spot for it. So let's go ahead and just see how this sounds. Let me turn this off. This is what it sounds like.
You know this ain't no different day.
Let me go ahead and remove that.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play.
Only so subtle. I find that this Air EQ from Slate is not as much of my flavor as it once was. I think it makes it sound a little bit brittle. But here's the Air EQ. Here's the Mag EQ from Plugin Alliance that I would have liked.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play. We got that lover serving trace. No.
So I would have bumped it up quite a bit at 20K. 10K would have been a little bit harsh or extreme for me. But that's what I would have added. But that's not the mix that we got. Let's go ahead and see what else. Drum bus, guitar, bass. I'm kind of surprised. Oh, what did I didn't do any decapitator on that. Interesting. Bass guitar, very simple and straightforward. There was like no automation on it, and it's just a gate, FG stress, which I always use for heavier compression, and then I gave it a few bumps at 40 and 50 dB with the FGA, which is the API emulation. So aside from it being louder, significantly louder, it just adds a little bit more beef to that. There's nothing on the keys. The sends bus, I didn't really talk about that. Basically, these are the produced reverbs and delays that were sent by Quincy. And then strings, I just added a little compressor, 4G, FG401. And then on my master bus, which I was hoping to have sent it out to a mastering engineer, but you know, this one did the job just fine. Slightly adding, I don't add too much, and then I turned down the mix. I feel like let's see what the consequences would have been if I had turned up the mix all the way. Would have been a little bit too much distortion on the low end. And then I have my two bus compressors right here, the FG Gray and FG Red.
You know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play.
That's just there both to keep the volume and levels controlled. That's all I have it there for. Added some more Air EQ. Again, I would have added the Mag EQ instead of that. And then my Slate digital trusty FGX, which I am now abandoning and swapping out for another limiter from Tokyo Dawn Records, the TDR6. This is what I would have used instead. Let me see what kind of results it would have produced if I had used this one.
You know this time I like to play. We got that lover serving trace. You see when dreamers come to stay. It's the trust staff game. It's not
You can push this. You can push this a lot more than you can push the Slate one, and you would be able to get a louder and cleaner master, quote unquote master, so to speak.
you know this ain't no different day. You know this time I like to play.
But yeah, this is it. This is Wire. This is Wire as it was mixed with a little bit of what ifs and what could I have done, and maybe a couple of things tweaked here and there. Beautifully arranged song, beautifully produced. Quincy and Josh did a phenomenal job on the production on this, and Tarek's songwriting, this just on another level. This is not a songwriting breakdown, though. It's just a production and mixing breakdown. Anyway, guys, I thank you so much for checking this out. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you guys in another video. Take care.